Okay, so in this chapter, we'll learn about the rate of water flow. So for this rate of water flow, you need to be very careful because water doesn't flow this way, in this direction, right? So when you pour a water to a glass, it actually fills up from the bottom and it goes up. Okay, so same thing for here also. It goes from the bottom and then it goes up. And same thing for here, it goes from the bottom and then it flows up this way. And lastly, for this, it's at the bottom and then it goes upwards. So when it comes to water flow, there is only 4 types that you have to learn. So what are the different 4 types? These are the different 4 main shapes that you need to know. So for water flow, because we know that the height is increasing for sure. So if the height is increasing, the water flow, you see, is always increasing because we are filling up the container. That means that in a graph that we draw, it will always go up. Means this is the height. It will always be increasing. Okay, so what are the different variations that you need to know? So let's go more in depth in that. So now there are 2 different shapes. Over here, these 2 are called uniform shape. So whenever it is a uniform shape, that means that it's gonna be a straight line graph. Next, this over here is called a non-uniform shape. And non-uniform shape means that it's gonna be a curve graph. So let's start with this. So why is it a straight line? Because it's uniform. You can see, right? This part here is the same as the one on top. So over here, if you look at this, because this glass is fatter than the other glass, that means that the rate of flow of water is gonna be slower. So it's still gonna be a straight line graph, but just that it's gonna be less steep. Compared to this skinnier one, the bottom part and the top part is also the same, it's uniform shape, but because it's a slimmer vase, so that means that the water flow is going to be steeper and it's going to be faster compared to the one on the left. Next up, let's do the one in green. So the one in green means this. You can see, right? The water flow at first, it needs to cover a bigger surface area. But on top, it has to be lesser. It means that it's going to go from slow, takes a slower time to fill up the bottom, but once it hits the top, it's going to get faster. So from slow to fast, there's only 2 types of curve. It's either this way or this way, because for the y value, it's always going up. So it's getting from slow to fast means it's going to be steeper, right? Because steeper means it's going to start out slow. So let's see over here. Is it slow? The gradient is less steep and then it's going to get steeper and steeper. So perfect. This is a match. So therefore the curve is going to be like that, where it started out slow first and then it's going to get steeper. And then the next one, it is lesser surface area, so it's going to be a lot faster to fill out the bottom, but once it hits the top, it is slower, so it's going to be less steep. So here matches because it starts with a very steep curve, less steep, less steep. So it's going to be super steep at first, and then it's going to be less steep towards the end. And that is the different rate of flow of water. Okay, so this is the general idea of the 4 types. Next, you need to know is the cutting point, because sometimes they have very interesting shapes. So what are the interesting shapes they have? For example, like this. Okay, let me redraw it properly. Here, and then something curved. So for this, you need to imagine where are the cutting points. So there are 3 cutting points. This is one cutting point here, second cutting point here. And because the water is going to flow, how come there's a line here? Because can you see? Less steep, okay, lesser is a skinnier first. Then it's going to get wider and wider and super wide. And then now it becomes super wide, less wide. And then here is just uniform shape. So how do we draw this graph? So the rate of water flow for here is, first I need to have my cutting points. This is the one in red. Here is the cutting point, and here is the cutting point. So this cutting point 1 and cutting point 2, cutting point 1 and cutting point 2. So for the one is the one in green, you can see it's getting less, it's going to be less wide and then to super wide. So you can see it's case number 4. So it's a gradual. And when it hit the blue one, it's going to be this way. And then when it hit a pink one, it means that it's going to be straight line. It's no longer going to be a curve. It's going to be a super steep. So it's curve, curve, line. And that is the general idea for rate of water flow.